Hello and welcome to Everything April YouTube channel. Thank you for stopping by today. Please subscribe if this is your first time on my channel. Click on the notification bell as well to be notified each time I upload a new video, and also give this video a thumbs up. So today's video is on how to cut a 6 pieces blouse without a pattern. So I'll be drafting directly and cutting directly on my fabric without using a pattern. Please watch the end of the video. Thank you. I have folded my fabric into two to cut out the front part of this blouse, and you can see a line I have drawn. That is a line for half of my bust span measurement, which is 4.5 inches plus half inch. Since I'm drafting directly on my fabric, my bust span measurement is 9, so it divided by 2, I have 4.5 plus extra half inch for joining. So that is the line, and I've ruled that out from the top to the hem of the blouse. And the length of the blouse is 25 inches, and I have 2 inches extra for hemming and also for joining the shoulder half inch. So 10.5 inches is the bust point line plus half inch for joining the shoulder. I have 11 inches, and under bust measurement line is 14.5 inches plus half inch joining allowance will give me 15 inches. The waistline is 16.5 plus half inch joining allowance will give me 17 inches, and the length of the blouse is 25 inches plus half inch for joining at the shoulder will give me 25.5 inches. Then I have 1.5 inches left for hemming the lower part of the blouse, and I've ruled out these measurements. I've ruled a horizontal line for these measurements. So for the dart, I will take a dart of 1.5 inches on both the under bust line and on the waistline. So the darts you take depends on the size of the bust and what you want to achieve. So I'm taking a dart of 1.5 inches on both the under bust line and on the waistline, and I've connected the points together. Then I would use a curve ruler to connect from the bust point to the dart leg on the under bust line. So I would connect as you see me do. Then on the shoulder, I will take a dart of 1 inch on the shoulder. I will take a dart of 1 inch on the shoulder, and from the bust point line, I will come up by half an inch and then connect the dart from the shoulder to the half inch I came up by. I'll connect the points together. Then on the hem part, after the bust point line I drew, I will take an A-line allowance. It all depends on what you want and the amount of fabric you have, but you should take at least 3 inches A-line allowance, and I'll connect from the dart leg on the waistline to this 3 inches allowance that I took. I would connect just as I'm demonstrating from the darts on the waist to the 3 inches A-line allowance that I took. So I would have to cut out. So like I said before, the dart you take depends on the size of the person you're making it for, the size of the bust. So I would cut out from the A-line allowance up to the dart on the shoulder. I'll just cut out just as I'm demonstrating. So after cutting out, I will drop the center front on the fabric just as I'm demonstrating to cut out the sides, so that the points where the center front and the side front will be joined will be the same. They are supposed to have the same shape. So I am trimming out using the center front to trim out the side where they will be joined together for the side front, and I have done that. So after cutting, this is what the two sides will look like. I'm flipping it so that you see they both mirror each other, the sides where they'll be joined together. So I'm placing the center front on top of the fabric in order to measure out take my body measurement. So I'm extending the line for the bust point line, the under bust line, and the waistline also on the center front fabric. So what I'll do now will be to measure what I have on the center front I have 5 inches, so I would start my measurement from 5 inches and I'll measure quarter of my bust measurement, which is 11 inches, and I would know that on the bust point line, and I'll add extra 2.5 inches allowance to that. 1 inch for joining the center front to the center side front, and then 1.5 inches side seam allowance. I'll also measure what I have on the waistline, and from what I have 3/4 inch. I would measure 10 inches, which is quarter of my waist measurement, and I'll also add the 2.5 inches seam allowance to that measurement, just like I'm doing. So I would now extend this line I have on the waist. I'll extend it up and also extend it down to the hemline. So after bringing down this line, the line for the measurement for the waist, I brought it down up to the hem line. So from that line, I would measure the 3 inches A line allowance that I took for the center front as well. I'll take also that A line allowance for the side, and I'll connect from the waist down to the hem where I have the 3 inches point. So I'm also extending this line up to first cut out the side. I'll cut out the side before I draw out the shoulder slope and the armhole curve. So I've cut out this part. So what I'll do now for the hem part, I'm going to curve it a bit on both sides. I came up by 1 inch and I made a curve, just as you can see, and I would trim out these points. So to take both the shoulder slope and also the armhole measurement, I'm dropping the front to the other side, as you can see. So I marked 1/2 inch on both the center front and the side front where they'll be joined together, and I placed them, making sure that it's 1/2 inch joining allowance when I joined them. So I'm joining them. I have 1/2 inch underneath on the other fabric. So I measured half of my shoulder measurement, which is 7.5, and from there I took 9 inches, which is the chest line measurement. So I'm joining the point up to the measurement down, the 9 inches measurement, and then I'm going to extend the lines I have on my bust, the measurement I have on my bust point line, which is the measurement quarter of the bust measurement and also the seam allowance I added. Then I'm taking the 1 inch for shoulder slope and also measuring 3 inches. Then I'll connect the 1 inch for the shoulder slope to the 3 inches point I marked. So I'm connecting just as you can see. Then I'll check what I have from the shoulder slope to the chest line, and from the middle I came in by 3/4 inch. So I'm using my armhole curve to connect from the 3/4 inch down to the chest line and also up to the shoulder slope. So I've connected and made the armhole curve for the front armhole. So for the neckline, I will take a neck width of 4 inches and a neck depth of 6 inches, and I'll then make a curve for my neckline. A neck depth of 6 inches and a neck width of 4 inches. Then after doing that, before I cut, where I have my, on the bust point line, where I have the measurements for the, I've added the seam allowance for the bust, I'll connect that line. I'll connect it back to the waistline. As you can see, I'll connect it from the bust down to the waistline as I'm demonstrating. So this part will be cut off. I didn't join this before because I've not taken my armhole curve. So now that I've made the curve for the armhole, I'll also cut that part out. So I'll cut out the neckline, the shoulder slope, and also the armhole down to the point where I connected to the waist. So this is it for the front part of the 6 pieces blouse. So I would unpin and show you what it looks like. This is what a side looks like, one side of the front. This is what it looks like. So I'll go ahead and fold my fabric to cut out the back part of this blouse. So I have folded my fabric for the back into two, and for the back I have from the shoulder to 10 inches is where my dart will start, 1 inch below the chest line, and I also have the waistline same as that of the front and also the hemline. I've also included my zipper allowance measurement, 1.5 inches for my zipper allowance, and all my measurements will start from the zipper allowance part. From the zipper allowance measurement, I measured out the bust span just like I did for the front. So on the waistline, I took a dart of 1/2 inch and I'm connecting it to the 10 inches line I have up. And then on the hemline as well, I would take the 3 inches A-line allowance, and then I'll connect from the dart on the waistline down to these 3 inches I marked on the hemline. So I'll connect down to the 3 inches as I'm demonstrating. Then to eliminate zip bulge on the zipper allowance side on the waistline, I would come in by 1/2 inch and I'll connect it down towards the hem side and also connect it up towards the chest line, the 10 inches line I marked up. So I would go ahead and cut out the center back. So after cutting out the center back, I will do the same thing I did for the front. I would drop it on top of the remaining part of the fabric to trim out the sides so that the sides will be of the same shape. So I will trim out the same thing, the same way I did for the front. I'm trimming out the sides so that they will be the same thing. So I would also take my measurements, my body measurements. To do that, I'm marking out the 1.5 inches zipper allowance to know where the real center back is. So on the chest line, I measured out the 5 inches I have for the center back, and I extended my tape from 5 inches. I would measure quarter of my bust measurement plus 2.5 inches side seam allowance, same measurement I have for the front. On the waist, I'll measure what I have on the waist and start measuring from that 4.5 inches I have on the waist. I'll then take quarter of my waist measurement plus 2.5 inches seam allowance, and I extended the line down like I did in front and took my A-line allowance of 3 inches and connected to the waist. So all I have to do now is to cut out the side back. I also made a curve on the hem parts, the sides of the hem parts of the side of the back pieces, just like I did for the front. Then to take my shoulder slope and my chest line, I would place my fabric the center back on top of the other, making sure I have 0.5 inches overlapping each other. So I will take half of my shoulder measurement, which is 7.5 inches, and from there I came down by 3/4 of an inch, and I'll connect it to the 3 inches point I made for the shoulder slope. And from the 7.5 inches I came down by 9 inches for my chest line. So I'm also extending the measurements I have on the 10 inches point down up to my chest line. So I would measure what I have and find the midpoint of that, and from there I would make my curve, my armhole curve. From the shoulder slope to the chest line, I found the middle of that, and I'm making a curve for my back armhole. So to take the neckline, I will take a neck width of 4 inches, same neck width with the front, and a neck depth of 4 inches. So the neckline for the back part of the blouse is 4 inches by 4 inches. The neck width of the front and the back must be the same. Then the neck depth for the back is 4 inches. So I would use a pin to hold the center back and the side back in place to avoid it moving around when I'm cutting out. So I'll cut out the shoulder slope, the armhole part, and also the neckline. So as you're watching this video, if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, please click on the subscribe button now, and also click on the notification bell so you can be notified when I upload a new video. And please give this video a thumbs up. So as you're cutting, remember also to cut out the part for the zip bulge, and also to split the center back into two. Thank you for watching. Give this video a thumbs up, and in my next upload will be on how I sewed this 6 pieces blouse. So I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, bye.